Amid the rain and the fear, a beggar girl finds shelter in an old barn on the outskirts of the city. Inside, she discovers an unconscious millionaire, injured and completely alone, just like her. Moved by compassion, she decides to help him, not knowing that this simple gesture would change everything. Watch until the end to understand what happened. In the forgotten outskirts of Oak Ridge, Ohio, where abandoned factories stood like ghostly monuments to better times, 7-year-old Lily Morgan had learned to survive by becoming invisible. Her small frame, always wrapped in oversized clothes found in donation bins, moved through the shadows of the Rust Belt town with the quiet expertise of someone much older. The harsh Midwestern wind cut through her thin jacket as she huddled against a brick wall, counting the meager coins she'd collected that day. Lily hadn't always been alone. 4 months ago, she'd made the hardest decision of her young life, leaving her 5-year-old sister Emma at the Oak Ridge Children's Center. The memory still burned like a physical wound. Emma's confused tears, the social worker's pitying glance, and the terrible silence afterward. But Lily had convinced herself it was the right thing to do. Emma would have proper meals, a warm bed, and maybe even a chance at being adopted by a real family. On the streets, she might have suffered the same fate as their mother, who had simply faded away in their small apartment after months of illness they couldn't afford to treat. Just gonna check on her today, Lily whispered to herself, a daily ritual that kept her moving forward. Just gotta make sure she's okay, and then I'll find us a home. Despite her circumstances, Lily possessed an unbreakable spirit. Where other children played with toys, she improvised games with discarded bottle caps. While they attended school, she educated herself by sneaking into the back of the public library, absorbing whatever books she could find. Her playground was the loading dock at Wilson's Grocery, where she earned quarters by helping elderly shoppers with their bags. Her most treasured possession was a faded blue handkerchief Emma had decorated with crooked stars using a marker they'd found. "Magic cloth," Emma had declared proudly. "It'll protect you when I can't." Lily kept it tucked in her pocket, a talisman against the cruelties of her world. That October evening, the weather forecast had promised the first major storm of the season. The sky darkened prematurely, casting an ominous shadow over Oak Ridge. Lily had planned to sleep in her usual spot, behind the dumpster at Joe's Diner, where the kitchen vents blew warm air all night. But the approaching thunder changed her calculations. She needed better shelter. The rain began just as she reached the edge of town, fat drops quickly becoming a torrential downpour. Lightning split the sky, illuminating an old structure in the distance, the abandoned Miller farm. Local kids whispered that it was haunted, which normally would have kept Lily away. But tonight, ghosts seemed less threatening than pneumonia. She ran across the muddy field, her sneakers sinking into the soft earth with each step. The ancient barn loomed ahead, its weathered red paint peeling away like scabs from a wound. A massive oak tree had fallen across part of the roof years ago, but the structure had stubbornly refused to collapse completely. Lily slipped through a gap in the wooden slats, relieved to escape the punishing rain. The interior was dark and smelled of damp hay and rust. She was about to settle into a corner when a strange sound froze her in place, a mechanical groan followed by what sounded like labored breathing. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the scene through the holes in the roof. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs at what she saw. A sleek black SUV had somehow crashed through the back wall of the barn, its front end crumpled against a support beam. Steam hissed from the damaged engine, and inside, slumped over the steering wheel, was a man. Her first instinct was to run. Adults meant complications, especially wealthy ones, and nobody driving a car like that was poor. But something kept her rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the way the man's hand twitched against the window, or how his breathing sounded painful and irregular, reminding her of her mother's final days. "Mister?" Her voice was barely audible over the storm. "Hey, mister? You okay in there?" No response. Another flash of lightning revealed the man's face, older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and a bleeding gash across his forehead. His expensive suit was rumpled and wet. Even in his unconscious state, his expression seemed troubled, haunted by something beyond his current predicament. Lily approached cautiously, testing each step as if the ground might disappear beneath her. She tried the door handle. It opened with a heavy metallic groan, and immediately the man began to slide out. She wasn't strong enough to stop his fall completely, but managed to break it somewhat, guiding his body to the dirt floor of the barn. "Wake up," she urged, shaking his shoulder gently. "You gotta wake up, mister." The man's eyelids fluttered. "Thomas?" he mumbled. "Michael? Where?" "I'm Lily," she said firmly. "You're hurt. Your car crashed into a barn." His eyes opened fully then, revealing a startling blue that reminded Lily of the lake in springtime. Confusion gave way to pain as he tried to move. "My head." "You're bleeding," Lily informed him matter-of-factly. She pulled Emma's handkerchief from her pocket, and after only a moment's hesitation, pressed it against the wound on his forehead. "This is a magic cloth. It helps." The man looked at her properly then, taking in her small stature, dirty clothes, and the serious expression that seemed out of place on such a young face. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. I didn't see the turn." "The rain? You shouldn't drive in storms," Lily admonished him with the straightforward logic of a child. "It's dangerous." A weak smile touched his lips. "You're right about that." He tried to sit up but winced and fell back. "Robert Anderson," he said after catching his breath. "Everyone calls me Bob." "You should stay still," Lily advised. "You might have broken something." Bob nodded slightly, then grimaced at the movement. "What are you doing out here alone, Lily? Where are your parents?" Lily's face closed off. A defense mechanism developed over months of similar questions from concerned adults. "I'm not alone now," she deflected. "You're here." Thunder boomed directly overhead, making the entire barn tremble. Lily flinched, despite herself. Bob noticed. "Afraid of storms?" he asked gently. "I'm not afraid of anything," Lily lied, her small chin lifting in defiance. Bob didn't challenge her. Instead, he said, "I used to fear them as a boy. My father told me it was just the angels bowling in heaven." His voice took on a faraway quality. "Now I think it's just the sound of things breaking apart." There was something in his tone that Lily recognized, the hollow emptiness of loss. It was the same tone she heard in her own voice when she spoke about Emma. "What broke apart for you?" she asked directly. Bob looked surprised by the question, as if not expecting such perception from a child. "Everything," he answered simply. "My company, my family, my sense of who I am." Lily considered this. "But you still have that fancy car and nice clothes." "Some things," Bob said carefully, "look whole from the outside when they're completely shattered within." They fell silent then, two strangers from different worlds, united by circumstances and shared understanding of what it meant to lose something essential. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the countryside, but inside the barn, something unexpected was happening, a connection forming between the wealthy businessman whose life had collapsed and the homeless child who had never had much to lose in the first place. As the night deepened, Bob drifted in and out of consciousness. During his lucid moments, Lily told him about life on the streets, not to gain sympathy but as straightforward facts. She explained her system for finding food, her techniques for staying warm, and her daily visits to the fence behind the Oak Ridge Children's Center, where she could sometimes catch glimpses of Emma playing in the yard. "She doesn't see me," Lily explained, arranging hay to create a makeshift pillow for Bob's head. "I stay hidden. If she saw me, she might cry or try to come with me, and then they wouldn't let her get adopted." "That's very selfless," Bob murmured. Lily shrugged, unfamiliar with the term. "That's what big sisters do." As rain pounded the roof and wind howled through the broken beams, Lily curled up nearby, keeping watch over this strange man who spoke to her like a person instead of a problem. Tomorrow she would need to find help, but tonight in this abandoned barn, two broken souls had found unexpected sanctuary from the storm. Morning arrived with watery sunlight filtering through the barn's damaged roof. Lily awoke first, momentarily disoriented, until she remembered the events of the previous night. She checked on Bob, who was still sleeping, his breathing steadier but his face pale beneath the dirt and dried blood. The gash on his forehead had stopped bleeding, but his right leg was bent at an awkward angle that worried her. "Mr. Bob," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. "Wake up, it's morning." His eyes opened slowly, clouded with pain and confusion. "Lily," he rasped, recognition dawning. "You stayed." "Course I did," she replied matter-of-factly. "You need help." "Your leg doesn't look right." Bob attempted to move and immediately grimaced. "I think you're correct about that. My phone checked already, Lily said. It's broken, and there's no signal out here anyway. Bob nodded weakly. I need to get to a hospital. Lily's face grew serious. I'll go get help. There's a mechanic shop not far from here, maybe 4 miles. She stood up, brushing hay from her clothes. You stay awake, okay? Don't go to sleep again. Wait, Bob called as she headed toward the barn door. Be careful and... Thank you, Lily. She paused, unused to gratitude. I'll be back, she promised. And then she was gone, a small figure darting across the muddy field. The journey to town was arduous. The storm had left fallen branches and debris across the rural road, and Lily's worn sneakers provided little protection against the cold puddles. But she pressed on with single-minded determination, her thoughts oscillating between the injured man in the barn and the sister she wouldn't be able to check on today. By mid-morning, she reached Wilson's Auto Repair at the edge of Oak Ridge. The garage door was open, country music drifting out along with the smell of motor oil and coffee. Inside, a burly man in overalls was bent over the engine of a pickup truck. Excuse me, Lily called, her voice smaller than she intended. Jack Wilson straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. His weathered face registered surprise at seeing a child alone in his shop. Hey there, little lady. You lost. There's a hurt man in Miller's old barn, Lily announced without preamble. His car crashed in the storm. His leg looks wrong and he hit his head. Jack's expression shifted from confusion to concern. Whoa, slow down. A car accident? Out at the Miller place. That's private property now. He needs help, Lily insisted. He's been there all night. Jack studied her closely, the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes that seemed at odds with her disheveled appearance. Your daddy know you're here. Lily didn't answer directly. Please, he's really hurt. Something in her earnestness convinced him. Jack grabbed his keys from a hook on the wall. All right, show me where. We can take my tow truck. Lily hesitated at the door of the massive vehicle, momentarily wary of climbing into a stranger's truck. Jack seemed to understand her reluctance. Tell you what, he said gently. I'll call Sheriff Davis to meet us there. That way you don't have to worry about trusting just me. This compromise satisfied Lily enough that she climbed into the passenger seat, though she sat perched on the edge, ready to bolt if necessary. As they drove, Jack tried casual conversation. So you got a name? Lily. Lily what? Just Lily. Jack nodded, respecting her boundaries. I'm Jack Wilson. Lived in Oak Ridge my whole life. Never had a kid lead me to a crash victim before. First time for everything, Lily replied, echoing a phrase she'd heard adults use. They turned onto the dirt road leading to the Miller property, the tow truck bouncing over ruts left by the storm. As they approached the barn, Lily pointed. There, his car went through the back wall. Jack whistled when he saw the damage. That's a brand new Range Rover. Someone was driving way too fast for these roads. Inside the barn, they found Bob awake, but clearly in pain. His face brightened when he saw Lily. You came back. Told you I would, she replied simply. Jack knelt beside Bob, his mechanic's hands gently assessing the injured leg. Sir, I'm Jack Wilson from town. The little lady here came to get help. I've called an ambulance, but these back roads are still pretty bad from the storm. Could be another 20 minutes. Thank you, Bob said weakly. Both of you. While they waited, Jack took a better look at the crashed vehicle. You came off Route 33, didn't you? Missed the curve completely, Bob nodded. I was distracted. Shouldn't have been driving in that condition. Been there myself, Jack said kindly. Divorce papers came through 3 years ago. Wrapped my truck around a tree that night. Luckily, only thing I broke was my pride. A ghost of a smile touched Bob's lips. Family problems have a way of clouding judgment. The wail of a siren announced the arrival of the ambulance, followed closely by Sheriff Davis's patrol car. The next hour passed in a blur of activity, paramedics stabilizing Bob's leg, police taking statements, and Jack offering to tow the damaged Range Rover to his shop. Throughout the commotion, Lily gradually retreated into the shadows of the barn, her instinct for self-preservation kicking in. Sheriff Davis had already given her several curious looks, and she knew from experience that too many questions from authorities could lead to complications. As the paramedics prepared to transport Bob to the hospital, he suddenly called out, "Where's Lily?" "The girl who found me?" Reluctantly, Lily stepped forward from her hiding place near the barn door. "Come here." "Please," Bob requested, his voice stronger than it had been all morning. She approached cautiously, aware of the adults watching their interaction with interest. "You saved my life," Bob said simply. "I need to thank you properly when I'm better. Where can I find you?" Lily shifted uncomfortably. "Around," she said vaguely. Sheriff Davis stepped closer. "Young lady, we should call your parents. They must be worried sick about you." Lily's eyes darted toward the exit, calculating her escape route. Bob, despite his injured state, noticed her distress. "Perhaps," he interjected smoothly, "we could discuss this at the hospital. I'm feeling rather faint." The diversion worked. As the paramedics rushed to load Bob into the ambulance, Lily slipped away, vanishing into the tree line before anyone could stop her. From the safety of the woods, she watched the ambulance drive away, carrying the strange man who had looked at her with such genuine gratitude. She wondered if she would ever see him again, then pushed the thought aside. Attachment was a luxury she couldn't afford. 3 days later, Lily was behind Joe's diner sorting through the day's discards for anything salvageable when a familiar voice called her name. She turned to find Jack Wilson standing at the edge of the alley, hands in his pockets. "Thought I might find you around here," he said. "Folks at the diner say you come by most evenings." Lily said nothing, poised to run if necessary. "Don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble," Jack assured her. "Just passing along a message. That fellow from the barn, Mr. Anderson, he's been asking about you. Wanted me to tell you he's at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital, room 312 if you wanted to visit." "Why would I visit?" Lily asked, though curiosity had already taken root. Jack shrugged. "Didn't say. But he seemed pretty determined to find you. Even had his lawyer call me to make sure I'd look." He paused, studying her thin frame and 2 old eyes. "You know, my wife Sarah runs the cafe across from my shop. She always makes too many sandwiches for the lunch crowd. If you stopped by sometime around closing, she'd probably appreciate the help eating the extras." The offer was made casually, preserving Lily's dignity. She nodded slightly, acknowledging but not accepting. "Anyway," Jack continued, "thought you should know about Mr. Anderson. Up to you what you do with that information." He turned to leave, then added over his shoulder, "He's being discharged tomorrow afternoon, so if you're going, shouldn't wait too long." After Jack left, Lily sat on an empty crate, contemplating this unexpected development. Her carefully constructed routine didn't allow for hospital visits or forming connections with strangers, no matter how kind they seemed. Yet something about Bob Anderson had resonated with her, perhaps the sadness in his eyes that mirrored her own, or the way he spoke to her as an equal rather than a charity case. The following morning found Lily standing outside Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital, summoning the courage to enter. She had washed her face and hands in a gas station bathroom and combed her hair with her fingers, but nothing could disguise the worn state of her clothes or the thinness of her frame. Taking a deep breath, she marched through the automatic doors with feigned confidence, ignoring the curious glances from the reception staff. She took the elevator to the 3rd floor and followed the signs to room 312, where she found Bob sitting up in bed, his leg in a cast, typing on a laptop. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway and his face broke into a genuine smile. "Lily, you came." "I was hoping you would." "Jack said you were looking for me," she replied, remaining near the exit. "Yes, I wanted to thank you properly." Bob set aside his computer. "The doctor said if I'd stayed out there much longer, with the concussion and the cold, things could have gone very badly for me." Lily shrugged. "Anyone would have helped." "No," Bob said firmly. "Not anyone. Many would have walked away, especially given your own circumstances." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Lily, where have you been staying?" "The truth, please." She considered lying, but found herself unwilling to. "Different places." "Depends on the weather." Bob nodded as if her answer confirmed something. "No fixed address then." "And Emma, your sister you mentioned, she's at the Children's Center?" Lily's guard instantly rose. "What about her?" "Nothing bad," Bob assured her quickly. "I was just thinking about what you told me, about visiting her from a distance, about wanting her to have a better chance." "What's it to you?" Lily asked, defensive despite his gentle tone. Bob leaned back against his pillows. 3 months ago, I was CEO of Anderson Manufacturing. We made precision parts for agricultural equipment, not glamorous but essential. The company had been in my family for 3 generations. His voice took on a hollow quality. Then my brother Thomas and my son Michael orchestrated what amounted to a corporate coup. They convinced the board I was mentally unfit after a series of personal setbacks. Before I knew what was happening, I was removed from my position and my son was installed as interim CEO. They stole your company? Lily asked, moving a step closer despite herself. In a manner of speaking, though they'd say they saved it from my increasingly erratic leadership. Bob's mouth twisted bitterly. The night of the storm, I'd just left a meeting with the last lawyer in town willing to talk to me. He informed me that challenging my family would likely bankrupt me before I ever saw the inside of a courtroom. Lily processed this information. So you're not rich anymore? A short laugh escaped Bob. I still have some resources, but my main assets are tied up in legal battles, and my reputation in business circles is compromised. Why are you telling me this? Lily asked directly. Bob met her gaze steadily. Because I think we might be able to help each other. I still own the land where you found me, the Miller property. My grandfather bought it years ago as a potential expansion site. The barn needs work, but the farmhouse is structurally sound. I've been thinking about what to do next, and I've had an idea. Something that might benefit us both. What kind of idea? Lily asked, curiosity overcoming caution. A fresh start, Bob replied. For both of us. Bob's discharge from the hospital later that day marked the beginning of something neither he nor Lily could have anticipated. With his leg in a cast and strict instructions to avoid driving, Bob had arranged for a taxi to take them to a small motel on the outskirts of town, a modest establishment, but clean and respectable. Temporary headquarters, he explained to Lily as the cab pulled away, leaving them in front of room 14 of the Oak Ridge Inn. Until we figure out next steps. Lily remained guarded, hovering near the door as Bob settled himself onto one of the 2 beds, propping his injured leg on a pillow. Her eyes took in the room, the faded floral bedspreads, the small television, the coffee maker on the dresser. Simple accommodations, but luxurious compared to her recent sleeping arrangements. You can have the other bed, Bob said, noticing her hesitation. There's a vending machine outside if you're hungry, and we can order proper food later. Lily didn't move. What did you mean at the hospital? About helping each other? Bob nodded, appreciating her directness. Right to business. I respect that. He shifted to face her more fully. Here's my situation, Lily. I've lost my company, but not everything. I still have some personal savings, the Miller property, and decades of business experience. What I don't have is purpose, or anyone who genuinely cares whether I succeed or fail. He paused, gauging her reaction before continuing. You, on the other hand, have incredible resilience, resourcefulness, and a powerful motivation. Your sister. What you lack are the resources and legal standing to create stability for yourself and potentially reunite with Emma. So? Lily prompted, still uncertain where this was heading. So I'm proposing a partnership of sorts, Bob said. I want to convert the Miller property into a social enterprise, a place that provides housing and employment for people who've fallen through society's cracks. People like you, Lily, not charity but real opportunity. Lily's brow furrowed. What's a social enterprise? It's a business that makes money, but uses that money to solve social problems instead of just enriching shareholders, Bob explained. I'm thinking we could start with renovating the farmhouse and barn, then develop some small-scale manufacturing operations, maybe refurbishing agricultural equipment, given my background. The property has good bones and plenty of space. And where do I fit in? Lily asked, taking a tentative step further into the room. You would be my first resident and, if you're willing, my consultant. Bob smiled slightly at her surprised expression. You have insights I lack, Lily. You understand what people in your situation truly need, not what well-meaning outsiders think they need. That perspective is invaluable. Lily considered this, her natural skepticism battling with a flicker of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. What about Emma? That's more complicated, Bob admitted. She's in the system now. But if we can establish that you have a stable living situation and adult support, there might be ways to arrange visitation at first, and eventually... He left the implication hanging. You think they'd let me see her? Officially? The longing in Lily's voice was palpable. I can't promise anything, Bob said carefully. But I have contacts, people who owe me favors, including a good family lawyer. We can try. What I can promise is that you will have a safe place to live, regular meals and education. Lily's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? Nobody just does this stuff for free. Rather than being offended, Bob seemed to appreciate her wariness. The catch, as you put it, is that I need this too. After what happened with my family, I've been adrift. This project gives me purpose, a way to rebuild differently, better. He ran a hand through his silver hair, a gesture of unexpected vulnerability. And frankly, I admire you, Lily, your courage, your loyalty to your sister. I could use those qualities in my corner right now. For the first time since entering the room, Lily sat down on the edge of the second bed. I have conditions, she said firmly, Bob's eyebrows raised. I'm listening. I want to see Emma, not just someday, but soon, and regular. And you can't just change your mind and send me away if you get tired of this idea. Reasonable, Bob agreed. What else? Other kids too, Lily continued. Not just me. There's others that need help. That was always the plan, Bob assured her, though we'd need to grow into it responsibly. Lily nodded, then added her final condition. And school. I want to go to real school. Not just for show, but to learn stuff. I'm behind, but I'm smart. I can catch up. That's non-negotiable anyway, Bob said with unexpected firmness. Education is essential. They fell into silence, the weight of the proposed arrangement settling between them. Finally, Lily spoke again, her voice smaller. How do I know you won't be like the others? The adults who promise things then disappear? It was a question that cut to the heart of her experience, and Bob seemed to recognize its significance. He thought carefully before answering. You don't know, he said honestly. Trust is earned over time, not given in a moment. All I can offer now is transparency about my intentions and the opportunity for you to judge me by my actions rather than my words. Lily studied his face, searching for signs of deception. Finding none, she extended her small hand formally. Okay, we can try. Bob shook her hand with appropriate seriousness. Deal. The next morning, after a night in which Lily slept fitfully, still half expecting to wake up back in her usual hiding spots, they took a taxi to the Miller property. Seeing it in daylight, without the drama of the storm, revealed both its challenges and potential. The white farmhouse, though weathered, stood proud against the landscape, its wraparound porch sagging slightly but intact. The barn where they'd first met needed significant repair, especially where the Range Rover had crashed through the wall. It'll take work, Bob acknowledged as they stood in the overgrown yard. But that's part of the point. For the next 2 weeks, they established their initial routine. They stayed at the motel while Bob arranged for basic utilities to be restored at the farmhouse and hired local contractors to begin essential repairs. Lily, initially suspicious of every new person and development, gradually relaxed as Bob consistently followed through on his promises. He enrolled her in school, explaining to administrators that she was his distant relative who had come to live with him following family hardship. If they doubted the story, the combination of Bob's confident manner and the letter from his attorney discouraged further questions. Lily's first day of second grade at Oak Ridge Elementary was a study in contrasts. Academically, she struggled with formal lessons after months of self-directed learning. Socially, she observed her classmates with the watchful distance of someone unaccustomed to peers. But by the end of the week, her natural intelligence had begun to assert itself, and her teacher, Mrs. Winters, had taken a special interest in helping her adjust. Meanwhile, Bob spent his days divided between overseeing the property renovations and laying groundwork for the social enterprise. He registered a new business entity, Second Chance Enterprises, and began reaching out to his remaining industry. Contacts about potential contracts for refurbished equipment. Their evenings developed a comfortable rhythm. They would share dinner, often from the diner near the motel, and discuss their respective days. Bob never spoke down to Lily, instead treating her observations with genuine consideration. He taught her about business concepts using practical examples, while she offered insights about the community that he, as a relative outsider, couldn't access. The kids at school say the old factory on Elm might reopen, she reported one evening. Their parents are talking about it. Interesting, Bob mused. That's the former Davis manufacturing site. Fair's been closed for almost 3 years. Would that be good or bad for us? Lily asked. demonstrating her growing understanding of their enterprise. Both potentially. Competition for labor if we're hiring, but also potential partnership opportunities. Bob smiled at her. Good intelligence gathering. 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, Bob received clearance to move into the partially renovated farmhouse. The kitchen and 2 bedrooms had been made fully habitable, with other areas to follow. The day they transferred from the motel to the farm marked a significant milestone in their unconventional partnership. "You can choose which bedroom you want," Bob told Lily as they stood in the freshly painted hallway. She selected the smaller room that overlooked the back fields, rather than the slightly larger one facing the front drive. "I can see everything from here," she explained simply. "Better for keeping watch." Bob didn't comment on the survival instinct revealed in her choice, instead helping her arrange the modest belongings they'd purchased. New clothes, books, and a stuffed bear she'd grudgingly accepted, but now kept on her pillow. That evening, sitting on the porch as sunset painted the October sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Bob broached the subject they'd both been circling. "I spoke with Patricia Lewis today," he said, referring to the family attorney he'd retained. "About Emma." Lily's entire body tensed. "And? It's complicated," Bob admitted, "because you're not a legal guardian, and I don't have established custody of you yet either. But Patricia thinks we can arrange a supervised visit next week as a first step." Lily's eyes widened. "Really, I can see her? For real, not just through the fence?" "Really," Bob confirmed. "It won't be long, probably just an hour. And there will be a social worker present. But it's a start." What happened next surprised them both. Lily, who had maintained careful emotional distance despite their growing rapport, suddenly threw her arms around Bob in an impulsive hug. She withdrew almost immediately, embarrassed by the display. But Bob's gentle smile acknowledged the significance without making her uncomfortable. "One more thing," he said, reaching for a folder beside his chair. "I had Patricia draw these up as well. They're initial guardianship papers. Temporary for now, but we can file for something more permanent if that's something you might want down the line." Lily stared at the legal documents, the weight of their meaning slowly sinking in. "You want to be my guardian?" "Like officially?" "Only with your consent," Bob clarified. "This isn't a condition of our arrangement. You can stay regardless, but I thought having legal standing might help with Emma's situation. Among other things." Lily ran her fingers over the papers, tracing the formal language that represented something she'd stopped hoping for. Legitimacy, security, belonging. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice thick with emotions she couldn't quite name. As darkness settled over the farmhouse, Lily sat on her new bed, looking out at the stars appearing one by one in the autumn sky. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she allowed herself to contemplate a future, measured in years rather than days. A future that might somehow include Emma. In the room across the hall, Bob Anderson reviewed architectural plans for the barn renovation, occasionally glancing out his own window toward the distant lights of Oak Ridge. His thoughts turned to the board meeting, scheduled for the following month, the first he would attend since his removal, where he planned to introduce Second Chance Enterprises as a potential supplier to Anderson Manufacturing. Neither Lily nor Bob slept easily that night, each preoccupied with hopes that felt dangerous to acknowledge and fears that seemed smaller but still present. Yet in their separate rooms in the old farmhouse, both felt something unfamiliar taking root, the tentative foundation of home. The day of Lily's reunion with Emma dawned clear and crisp, a perfect late October morning that belied the emotional turbulence beneath its calm surface. Lily had barely slept, alternating between excitement and anxiety about how her sister would receive her after nearly 5 months of separation. "You look nice," Bob commented as Lily emerged from her room, wearing the new outfit they'd purchased for the occasion. Jeans without holes, a purple sweater and sturdy boots that finally fit properly. "Do you think she'll remember me?" Lily asked, voicing the fear that had kept her awake. Bob's expression softened. "Of course she will. You're her sister." The Oak Ridge Children's Center occupied a converted Victorian house on a tree-lined street near the town square. Its cheerful yellow exterior and well-maintained playground presented a welcoming facade, though Lily tensed as they approached the front steps. "Remember," Bob said gently, This is just the first visit. There will be more. Inside, they were greeted by Mrs. Patel, the center's director, and Diane Simmons, the social worker assigned to Emma's case. The women led them to a bright room furnished with child-sized tables, bookshelves, and toys, a designated visitation space. Emma is very excited, Mrs. Patel informed them. We explained that her sister was coming to play with her today. Lily nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Bob placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The door opened and a small figure appeared, holding the hand of another staff member. At 5 years old, Emma Morgan was tiny for her age, with the same dark hair as Lily but rounder cheeks that spoke of regular meals. She wore a flower-patterned dress and mismatched socks, one pink, one yellow. For a moment, the sisters stared at each other across the room. Then Emma's face broke into a radiant smile of pure recognition. "Lily!" she squealed, breaking free from the staff member and running full tilt toward her older sister. The impact of Emma's embrace nearly knocked Lily over. Small arms wrapped around her waist with surprising strength as Emma buried her face against Lily's new sweater. "You came back," Emma murmured, her voice muffled. "I knew you would." Lily knelt to properly hug her sister, tears streaming unchecked down her face. "I missed you so much, Em." The adults in the room discreetly stepped back, giving the sisters space for their reunion while maintaining supervision. Bob moved to a corner chair, allowing Lily this moment without intrusion. The hour passed in a blur of shared activities, reading stories, building with blocks, and simply talking. Emma chatted about her friends at the center, her favorite foods, and the cat that sometimes visited the playground. Lily listened with rapt attention, storing every detail like precious gems. When Mrs. Patel gently announced that their time was ending, Emma's face crumpled. "You're leaving again?" Lily looked helplessly toward Bob and Diane. The social worker stepped forward. "Lily will come back to visit again soon," she assured Emma, "and we can talk about making these visits regular." Emma considered this, then turned to Lily with the direct gaze of a child who needed absolute truth. "Promise you'll come back?" "I promise," Lily said firmly, "and I'm working on something even better, something so we can be together more." This satisfied Emma enough that she allowed herself to be led away, turning repeatedly to wave until she disappeared through the door. In the car afterward, Lily sat in silence, processing the intensity of the experience. Bob waited patiently, understanding her need for space. Finally, she spoke. "I want to sign those guardian papers, and I want to know exactly what we need to do so Emma can live with us someday." Bob nodded, recognizing the significance of her decision. "We'll talk to Patricia tomorrow. She'll help us map out the steps." That conversation with the attorney the following day was sobering. Patricia Lewis, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a reputation for frankness, outlined the challenges ahead. Establishing Bob as Lily's legal guardian is relatively straightforward given the circumstances, she explained in her office overlooking the Oak Ridge Town Square. Particularly since there appears to be no competing family member seeking custody. Lily shifted uncomfortably at this clinical assessment of her familial isolation, but remained focused on the goal. "What about Emma?" Patricia's expression grew more reserved. "That's considerably more complex. Emma has been in the system longer, is younger and therefore more adoptable, and already has potential placement options being explored." "What does that mean?" Lily demanded, alarm rising in her voice. "It means," Patricia said gently, "that there are families interested in adopting Emma. The center's primary mission is to place children in permanent homes." Lily looked stricken. "But I'm her family, her real family." "I understand that," Patricia assured her, "and it carries weight. But the courts prioritize stability and permanence. We need to demonstrate that reuniting the sisters serves Emma's best interests." "It does," Lily insisted, her composure cracking. "She needs me. I need her." Bob intervened, his voice calm but determined. "What exactly do we need to establish to make a compelling case?" Patricia ticked off points on her fingers. "Stable housing, which you've addressed. Financial security to support both children. A suitable environment for Emma's development. And time. Bob needs to demonstrate consistent guardianship of Lily before petitioning for Emma." "How much time?" Bob pressed. "Minimum 6 months," Patricia replied. "And that's being optimistic." The ride home was subdued. Lily stared out the window. her earlier elation from seeing Emma replaced by the dread of potentially losing her to adoption by strangers. 6 months is too long, she finally said as they turned onto the gravel drive leading to the farmhouse. They could give her away before then. We won't let that happen, Bob promised. We'll increase your visitation schedule immediately, and I'll speak with Mrs. Patel about our intentions. There are ways to slow the process without harming Emma's interests. The weeks that followed settled into a new rhythm. The guardianship papers for Lily were filed and provisionally approved, pending home visits and background checks. Bob accelerated the renovations on the farmhouse, prioritizing the creation of a suitable bedroom for Emma adjacent to Lily's. Weekly visits with Emma became established practice, each one strengthening the sisters' bond despite the institutional setting. Meanwhile, the social enterprise began taking tangible form. The barn repairs were completed, creating a workshop space where Bob installed basic equipment for refurbishing agricultural components. He hired Jack Wilson part-time to help set up the mechanical systems, and through Jack's connections, secured their first small contract, reconditioning irrigation pumps for a local farming cooperative. Progress was steady, but not without complications. Bob's former company, now under his son Michael's leadership, initiated legal proceedings, challenging his use of industry contacts and questioning whether Second Chance Enterprises constituted a violation of non-compete agreements Bob had signed years earlier. It's a nuisance suit, Patricia assured him after reviewing the documents. They know it won't stand up in court, but they're hoping to drain your resources and momentum. Michael wouldn't pursue this on his own, Bob said thoughtfully. This has Thomas's fingerprints all over it. My brother always believed the best defense was a strong offense. The arrival of these legal challenges coincided with Lily's growing pains in her new life. While she thrived academically once given proper support, social integration proved more difficult. Years of self-reliance had left her wary of peers and authority figures alike. An incident in the school cafeteria, where she instinctively hoarded food in her pockets, led to teasing from classmates who didn't understand the behavior's roots in survival. Mrs. Winters, her teacher, suggested counseling. Bob agreed it could help, but left the decision to Lily. I don't need to talk to a stranger about my feelings, Lily declared stubbornly when Bob broached the subject one evening as they worked on her math homework at the kitchen table. Not about feelings necessarily, Bob clarified, but about adjusting to changes. Sometimes an outside perspective helps. Lily considered this. Did you talk to someone after what your family did? The question caught Bob off guard. No, he admitted. Perhaps I should have. Did it help? Not talking about it? Bob smiled ruefully. Touché. No, it didn't. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Jack Wilson stood on the porch, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to drop by unannounced, he said, but I thought you should hear this from me before it hits the rumor mill. Anderson Manufacturing is reopening the old Davis plant. They're announcing it tomorrow, bringing jobs back to Oak Ridge and all that. Bob invited Jack inside, processing this development. Interesting timing. They've been resisting local manufacturing for years, claiming the costs were prohibitive. Word is they're automating most of it, Jack added, accepting the coffee Bob offered. High-tech equipment, minimal staffing. But the PR value of reopening the plant is the real play. After Jack left, Bob sat heavily at the kitchen table, his expression troubled. This isn't coincidence. They're establishing a presence here to monitor us, to pressure local businesses not to work with Second Chance. Lily, who had been quietly listening, asked, Is it because of me? Because you're helping me instead of trying to get your company back? No, Bob said firmly. This is about control and pride. Thomas never forgave me for inheriting the company leadership from our father, despite being the younger son. And Michael, he paused, pain crossing his features. Michael learned ambition from me, but not compassion. I spent his childhood focused on building the business, not our relationship. Now he's simply finishing what I started, prioritizing profit over people. The following morning brought another unwelcome development. Diane Simmons called to inform them that Emma's next visitation would need to be rescheduled and would include meeting a potential adoptive family. They're a local couple, both teachers, Diane explained. They've been approved for adoption, and specifically expressed interest in Emma after meeting her at a center event. Lily's reaction was instant and visceral. She snatched the phone from Bob's hand. "You can't give her away. She's my sister. We're supposed to be together." Bob gently reclaimed the phone, murmuring reassurances to Lily while continuing the conversation with Diane. After negotiating a compromise, the adoption process would proceed, but with acknowledgement of the sisters' relationship and continued visitation, he found Lily in her room, furiously shoving clothes into her backpack. "What are you doing?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "I'm going to get Emma," Lily declared, her voice shaking. "We'll run away. I took care of her before. I can do it again." Bob sat on the edge of her bed. "Lily, stop. Think this through. There's nothing to think about. They're going to give her to strangers. And if you run away with her, they'll find you both. Then you'll be separated permanently, and all our progress will be lost." Bob's voice remained calm despite the urgency. "We have legal options. Running isn't one of them." Lily hurled her backpack across the room. "Legal options take too long. You heard what Diane said. These people want Emma now. Meeting a potential family doesn't mean immediate placement," Bob reasoned. "And we have standing now. You have standing. Patricia is filing for sibling visitation rights that would apply regardless of Emma's placement." "It's not enough," Lily cried, tears of frustration spilling down her cheeks. "I promised I'd take care of her." "And you are," Bob insisted, "by doing this the right way. By creating a home where she can thrive, not hide." Their standoff lasted through the afternoon, with Lily alternating between angry outbursts and withdrawn silence. By evening, physical and emotional exhaustion had replaced her desperate energy. She emerged from her room to find Bob on the porch, reviewing contract documents in the fading light. Without speaking, she sat on the step below him, leaning slightly against his leg, in a rare gesture of physical trust. "I'm scared," she finally admitted, her voice small in the gathering darkness. "I know," Bob acknowledged. "I am too. Really, you. Fear isn't just for children, Lily. Adults just get better at hiding it." They sat in companionable silence as stars appeared in the November sky. The distant sound of a truck on the highway mingled with the rustling of fallen leaves across the yard. "Tomorrow," Bob said eventually, "we're going to visit Patricia again. And this time we're going to talk about family reunification in earnest, not just visitation rights. If these potential adoptive parents are local educators, there might be ways to structure an arrangement that serves everyone's interests, especially Emma's." Lily looked up at him, a fragile hope rekindling. "You think that's possible?" "I think," Bob replied carefully, "that business has taught me there's almost always a solution, if you're creative enough, and all parties are willing to negotiate in good faith." As they headed inside against the growing chill, Lily paused in the doorway. "Why are you doing all this?" "The truth." Bob considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Because when you pulled me from that wreck, you saved more than my life. You reminded me what truly matters." He smiled slightly. "And perhaps I'm trying to rebuild more than just a business here." Lily nodded, accepting this answer with characteristic directness. "Well, I'm glad you crashed into our barn." Bob laughed, surprised by her blunt summation. "Not my finest driving moment, but in retrospect, I'd have to agree." That night, as a light snow began falling, the first of the season, both residents of the farmhouse faced the challenges ahead with renewed determination. Their unconventional family and fledgling enterprise remained precarious, threatened by legal maneuvers and bureaucratic obstacles. But something fundamental had shifted in their relationship, a mutual trust forged through crisis and strengthened by shared purpose. In the barn-turned-workshop, the first completed irrigation pump sat ready for delivery, its refurbished components gleaming under the work lights, tangible, proof that broken things could be made whole again, with the right care and attention. The meeting with the potential adoptive parents, James and Caroline Fletcher, was scheduled for the first week of December at the Oak Ridge Children's Center. Lily approached the day with a mixture of dread and fierce determination, having spent hours with Patricia Lewis preparing what she would say. "Remember," Patricia advised as they sat in her car outside the center, "this isn't a competition. The Fletchers aren't your enemies. Everyone here wants what's best for Emma." Lily nodded stiffly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore her nicest outfit, a forest green dress with leggings and the silver heart necklace Bob had given her for her 8th birthday last month. The celebration had been small but meaningful, with a homemade cake and carefully chosen gifts, books, art supplies, and the delicate necklace that Lily touched now like a talisman. Inside, the center's meeting room had been arranged with toys and books to keep Emma occupied while the adults talked. Bob entered behind Lily, his presence a steady reassurance despite his own apprehension about the situation. The Fletchers arrived moments later. James taught middle school science, while Caroline was an elementary music teacher. Both in their mid-30s, they presented a picture of wholesome stability, exactly the type of couple adoption agencies prioritized. Emma's entrance changed the atmosphere instantly. She ran to Lily first, as always, then noticed Bob and offered him a shy wave. At 7 visits now, she had grown comfortable with his presence, though she still occasionally asked Lily in whispers if he was the prince who had rescued her sister, a fairy tale version of events that Lily hadn't bothered to correct. "Emma," Mrs. Patel said gently, "these are Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher. They've come to meet you and play for a while." Emma regarded the couple with polite curiosity. Caroline knelt to Emma's level, offering a warm smile. "I heard you like to sing. I'm a music teacher, and I brought something you might enjoy." She produced a small hand drum from her bag. Emma's eyes lit up, her natural exuberance winning over caution. Soon she was showing Caroline her favorite clapping game, while James joined in with genuine enthusiasm. Lily watched from the sidelines, a complex tangle of emotions churning inside her. The Fletchers were kind. They were good with Emma. They would probably be loving parents, all reasons she should feel relieved. Yet each interaction twisted the knife deeper. Halfway through the visit, while Emma was distracted with a puzzle James had brought, Caroline approached Lily. "You're very important to Emma," she said simply. "She talks about you constantly." Lily raised her chin slightly. "We're sisters." "Yes," Caroline agreed. "And that bond is special." She hesitated, then continued carefully. "James and I want you to know that if things move forward with Emma, we would never want to separate you two completely. Sisters should be in each other's lives." Before Lily could respond, Diane called everyone together. "Since this is going well, I thought we might discuss some practical matters." What followed was a surreal conversation about visitation schedules, holidays and long-term considerations, all predicated on the assumption that Emma's placement with the Fletchers was proceeding. Patricia interjected regularly, ensuring Lily's rights as a sibling remained central to the discussion. But the underlying message was clear. The adoption process was gaining momentum. Afterward, in the privacy of Bob's car, Lily finally broke her carefully maintained composure. "They're going to take her," she said, her voice flat with resignation. "They're perfect, and I'm just me." "Lily," Bob began, but she cut him off. "No, it's okay. I get it. They can give her things I can't, a normal life, 2 parents, music lessons." She turned to look out the window, hiding her face. "Maybe it's better this way." Bob pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. "Look at me, please." Reluctantly, Lily met his gaze. "This isn't over," he said firmly. "Yes, the Fletchers are good people. Yes, they could provide Emma with a stable home. But so could we. Differently, perhaps, but no less validly. But no buts. Patricia is filing the kinship care petition tomorrow. The home study for your guardianship is complete and positive. Second Chance has secured 3 contracts this month alone. We have a case, Lily, a strong one." She wanted desperately to believe him, but experience had taught her that happy endings were the exception, not the rule. "What if it's not enough?" Bob's expression softened. "Then we adapt. We ensure you remain a significant presence in Emma's life, regardless. But I'm not conceding defeat before we've even truly begun the fight." His determination rekindled something in Lily that had begun to flicker out. She straightened in her seat, squaring her shoulders. "Okay, what's our next move?" That question was answered unexpectedly the following afternoon when Lily returned from school to find an unfamiliar luxury sedan parked in the farmhouse driveway. Her first thought was that Michael or Thomas had come to cause more trouble, but the tall, elegant woman standing on the porch with Bob didn't match either description. "Lily," Bob called as she approached cautiously. "I'd like you to meet someone. This is Elizabeth Anderson, my former sister-in-law, Thomas's ex-wife. Elizabeth Anderson was in her early 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and the poised demeanor of someone accustomed to moving in wealthy circles. Yet her smile as she greeted Lily held genuine warmth. "So you're the remarkable young lady I've been hearing about," she said, extending a hand formally. "I'm very pleased to meet you." Lily shook the offered hand, uncertain how to respond. "Are you here about the lawsuits?" Elizabeth laughed, a rich sound that transformed her patrician features. "Direct, just as Robert described. No, dear. I'm here because I believe my former husband and nephew are behaving abominably, and I decided it was time to intervene." Inside, over hot chocolate that Elizabeth had brought from an upscale cafe in Columbus, the situation became clearer. Elizabeth and Thomas had divorced 10 years earlier, after 30 years of marriage. Though no longer legally connected to Anderson Manufacturing, she retained significant social influence in business circles and, more importantly, intimate knowledge of Thomas and Michael's methods. "They're planning something beyond these nuisance lawsuits," Elizabeth explained, stirring her drink thoughtfully. "Thomas called our daughter last week, asking pointed questions about Robert's new venture. Very specific questions about the legal structure, potential investors, community support. Fishing for vulnerabilities," Bob surmised. "Precisely. And Michael has been meeting with the Oak Ridge Town Council. Rebecca, she's on the Historical Preservation Committee, mentioned it at our book club." Lily followed this exchange with growing concern. "Are they trying to shut us down? We haven't even really started yet." Elizabeth's gaze softened as she turned to Lily. "It's not about your enterprise specifically, dear. It's about control. Thomas has spent a lifetime in Robert's shadow, and Michael—" She glanced at Bob apologetically. "Michael inherited his father's determination, but not his perspective." "My fault," Bob acknowledged quietly. "I was so focused on building a legacy that I forgot to teach him why it mattered." The conversation shifted to practical matters, which council members might be sympathetic to Second Chance, which business leaders remained loyal to Bob despite the family rift, what regulatory hurdles might suddenly appear. "There's something else," Elizabeth said as she prepared to leave, "something that might help with your situation regarding Emma." Lily's attention sharpened instantly. "Caroline Fletcher is my niece's closest friend," Elizabeth continued. "They teach at the same school. I could speak with her, perhaps arrange a more private conversation outside the formal adoption process." Hope flared in Lily's chest. "You would do that?" "Of course." Elizabeth's expression grew serious. "Family separation leaves scars, Lily, some visible, some hidden. I've seen it firsthand." She glanced meaningfully at Bob. "Sometimes those who should be closest become strangers through pride and misunderstanding. If I can help prevent that for you and your sister, I consider it a moral obligation." After Elizabeth left, promising to return the following week with more information, Lily helped Bob prepare dinner, a simple ritual they'd established that gave structure to their evenings. "Your sister-in-law is nice," Lily observed as she set the table. "Not what I expected." "Elizabeth always was the most sensible member of the Anderson clan," Bob agreed, stirring the pasta sauce. "We remained friends after her divorce from Thomas, which didn't improve brotherly relations." "Why did they divorce?" Bob hesitated, considering how to frame the answer appropriately. Thomas's priorities shifted over time. The business became everything to him. Success, expansion, outperforming competitors. Elizabeth wanted more balance, more meaning. "Like what you're doing now," Lily noted perceptively. "Yes, I suppose so." Bob smiled ruefully. "Ironic that I'm finally implementing principles Elizabeth advocated decades ago." 3 days later, Elizabeth's intervention bore unexpected fruit. Caroline Fletcher called, asking if she and James could visit the farmhouse unofficially, without Diane or Mrs. Patel present. The Fletchers arrived on a Sunday afternoon, visibly impressed by the transformation of the property. Though still a work in progress, the renovated farmhouse now featured warm colors, comfortable furnishings, and personal touches that reflected its new inhabitants. Lily's artwork, displayed alongside Bob's collection of historical farming implements, bookshelves filled with shared interests despite their different ages. "This is lovely," Caroline commented, as Bob showed them the room being prepared for Emma, sunny yellow walls, a handcrafted bookshelf, and a window seat overlooking the fields. "You've created a real home here." Over coffee and the cookies, Lily had insisted on baking herself, with minimal supervision. The conversation grew remarkably candid. "Elizabeth explained your situation," James said, addressing Lily directly, "about how you and Emma became separated, and what you're trying to do now." Lily nodded, unsure where this was heading. "We want you to know," Caroline continued, "that we never intended to come between sisters. When we expressed interest in Emma, we were told her only family was unavailable." "That's not true," Lily said, her voice rising slightly. "I was always there. I just couldn't take care of her properly before." "We understand that now," James assured her, "and it's changed our perspective." Caroline reached for her husband's hand, seeking support for what came next. "We've been trying to start a family for 7 years. 3 miscarriages, 2 failed adoption matches before Emma. We thought this time to..." Her voice faltered. "What Caroline is trying to say," James continued gently, "is that we still want to be parents, but not at the cost of separating siblings who clearly belong together." Bob leaned forward, hope and caution warring in his expression. "What exactly are you proposing?" The Fletchers exchanged glances before Caroline replied, "We're not entirely sure yet, but we wanted to meet with you, to see this place, to understand what you're building here, and to explore whether there might be a solution that serves everyone's needs, especially Emma's." That conversation marked the beginning of an unprecedented collaboration. Over the following weeks, the Fletchers became regular visitors to the farmhouse. James, with his science background, took interest in the technical aspects of the equipment refurbishment, occasionally offering suggestions that improved their processes. Caroline began bringing her guitar, teaching Lily simple songs she could share during visits with Emma. Together with Patricia, they explored alternative arrangements, legal structures that might allow shared responsibility for Emma without the all-or-nothing approach of traditional adoption. The concept of kinship care plus emerged, where Lily's sibling relationship would be legally recognized alongside a supportive role for the Fletchers. As Christmas approached, this unusual alliance faced its first major test. The Fletchers invited Lily and Bob to join them at the Children's Center holiday party, where Emma would be performing in a short musical program. The event would be attended by staff, potential donors, and families considering adoption, a public acknowledgement of their evolving arrangement that could invite scrutiny. The evening of the party brought light snow and festive decorations to the center. Emma, dressed as an angel with tinsel wings and a crooked halo, spotted Lily immediately upon entering the auditorium and waved frantically from her position in the children's choir. Mrs. Patel approached, her expression curious, as she observed the unexpected grouping of Bob, Lily, and the Fletchers. "This is interesting," she commented diplomatically. "We're exploring collaborative options," Caroline explained smoothly, "for Emma's benefit." Diane Simmons appeared less receptive to this development, pulling Patricia aside for an intense whispered conversation that included frequent glances toward their group. The children's performance, a medley of holiday songs interspersed with enthusiastic if somewhat chaotic dance moves, momentarily suspended the undercurrents of adult complexity. Emma sang with abandon, her eyes repeatedly seeking out Lily for reassurance and beaming when she found her sister watching proudly. Afterward, during the reception, Lily was helping Emma select cookies from the refreshment table when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Completely inappropriate," a male voice was saying. "The child needs stability, not some jerry-rigged arrangement with her homeless sister." "Former situation was challenging, yes," Mrs. Patel's voice responded carefully, "but circumstances have changed significantly." "Based on what? A few months with a disgraced businessman running some charity project? That's hardly a foundation for permanent placement." Lily turned to identify the speaker, a tall man in an expensive suit, speaking with the authority of someone accustomed to having his opinions respected. With a jolt, she recognized him from photographs in Bob's study, Michael Anderson, Bob's son. Before she could process this development, Bob himself appeared at her side, his face tight with controlled anger. "Michael," he acknowledged coldly, "this is a surprise." Michael turned, his expression revealing momentary discomfort before smoothing into professional detachment. "Father, I was just discussing concerns about your ward situation with the center director. Without having met Lily or visited our home, Bob noted. Rather premature for forming judgments, wouldn't you say? Michael's gaze shifted to Lily, who stood protectively close to Emma. My concern is for the younger child's welfare. The board would be remiss not to investigate unorthodox placement proposals. The board? Bob repeated, comprehension dawning. You're on the center's board of directors. Recent appointment, Michael confirmed with a thin smile. Anderson Manufacturing is committed to community involvement, especially regarding vulnerable children. The strategic move was breathtaking in its calculation, using philanthropic positioning to gain leverage over Emma's placement. Lily felt a surge of helpless rage as she understood the implications. Their careful progress, the alliance with the Fletchers, the legal arrangements Patricia was crafting, all potentially undermined by Michael's influence over the very institution determining Emma's fate. Bob maintained his composure, though Lily could see the effort it cost him. We should discuss this privately. Not here, not now. Of course, Michael agreed smoothly. I'll have my assistant set something up after the holidays. His gaze lingered on the sisters for a moment longer before he turned and walked away, stopping to shake hands with several prominent community members on his way out. Caroline appeared at Lily's side, having witnessed the exchange from a distance. Who was that? Bob's son, Lily replied, her voice hollow with dread. He's trying to stop us from getting Emma. Caroline's expression hardened with unexpected resolve. Well, he's going to find that more difficult than he imagines. James and I may not have your family connection, but we do have spotless reputations in this community and 15 years of combined service to its children. James joined them, placing a supportive hand on Caroline's shoulder. And we've made our decision. We're withdrawing our application for Emma's adoption in favor of supporting your reunification petition. The announcement stunned Lily into silence. Even Bob appeared momentarily speechless. But why? Lily finally managed. You want to be parents. You love Emma. We do, Caroline confirmed. Which is why we'll remain in her life, as friends, as supporters, as whatever role allows her to thrive with her sister while still having our care. That's incredibly generous, Bob said quietly. James shook his head. It's not generosity. It's right. And sometimes doing right means adjusting your dreams, not abandoning them. As they spoke, Emma tugged at Lily's hand. Can I show you my cubby? I made special decorations. The adults exchanged glances, wordlessly agreeing to protect Emma from the complexities swirling around her. Lily forced a smile. Lead the way, superstar. Later that night, after Emma had been returned to the center, with promises of another visit soon, Lily sat on the porch swing despite the cold, processing the evening's dramatic turns. Bob joined her, offering a blanket and hot cider. Michael's involvement changes things, she said after a while, her breath fogging in the winter air. Yes, Bob acknowledged, but not necessarily for the worse. Lily looked at him skeptically. He hates me. He hates what we're doing. He doesn't know you, Bob corrected. And what he hates is what I represent. Failure, change, priorities he doesn't understand. Can we still get Emma? With him fighting us? Bob sighed, his expression thoughtful as he gazed across the snow-dusted fields. The path just got steeper. But remember what I told you about business? There's almost always a solution if you're creative enough, Lily recited. Exactly. Bob smiled slightly. And Michael may have overlooked something important in his calculations. What's that? You and Emma have something he never did, allies who care more about family than fortune. As if to underscore his point, Bob's phone chimed with a message. It was from Elizabeth, a single line that hinted at resources yet unmobilized. Time to call in some favors. The Anderson women are taking the field. Lily didn't fully understand the implications, but she recognized the shift in Bob's demeanor, a renewed determination that mirrored her own. Whatever Michael had planned, he had inadvertently accomplished something significant, transforming a loose coalition of well-meaning individuals into a united front with a common purpose. The Christmas lights strung along the porch railing twinkled against the gathering darkness, small beacons of warmth against the winter night. Inside the farmhouse, Emma's future bedroom waited, ready for a homecoming that suddenly seemed both more complicated and more possible than ever before. January arrived with bitter cold, and a series of challenges that tested the resilience of the fledgling family at the farmhouse. The legal battle for Emma intensified as Michael leveraged his position on the Children's Centre Board to raise questions about the suitability of Bob's guardianship. Though the Fletchers had officially withdrawn their adoption application in favor of supporting Lily's petition for kinship care, this created a vacuum that other potential adoptive families quickly sought to fill. 3 new applications for Emma specifically, Patricia reported during a strategy session in the farmhouse kitchen. The space had become their unofficial headquarters, with legal documents spread across the wooden table that Bob had restored himself, all with excellent qualifications and all suspiciously well connected to Anderson Manufacturing. Michael's recruiting allies, Bob concluded, rubbing his temples, making sure there are better options available if our petition falters. Elizabeth, who had become a regular presence at these meetings, nodded grimly. Classic Thomas strategy, implemented by Michael with even more precision. Create multiple pressure points rather than a single attackable position. Lily, who had been quietly listening while completing her homework at the far end of the table, looked up. What does that mean for Emma? For our visits? For now, nothing changes, Patricia assured her. Your visitation schedule is court-approved, but we need to accelerate our timeline. The longer Emma remains in the center's care, the more opportunity for interference. The immediate plan involved 2 parallel approaches: strengthening Bob's legal standing as Lily's guardian through character references and community integration, while simultaneously expanding Second Chance Enterprises to demonstrate financial stability. The latter goal faced significant headwinds as Michael and Thomas continued their campaign to isolate the social enterprise from potential clients and partners. Bob returned from a meeting with the Regional Agricultural Cooperative looking particularly discouraged. They've cancelled our contract for the irrigation pumps, he announced, hanging his coat with deliberate care that barely masked his frustration. Apparently, Anderson Manufacturing offered them a strategic partnership with terms they couldn't refuse. Lily, who had come to understand the business side of their venture with remarkable quickness, immediately grasped the implications. How many does that make now? 4 cancelled contracts in 3 weeks, Bob confirmed. We're down to the Wilson Auto Parts restoration and Mrs. Powell's garden equipment refurbishing. The financial pressure was only part of a larger campaign. Anonymous complaints had triggered inspections of the property by county officials. Rumors circulated in town questioning Bob's mental stability and business practices. The local newspaper ran a feature on innovative community partnerships, highlighting Anderson Manufacturing's investments in Oak Ridge while conspicuously omitting any mention of Second Chance. Through it all, Lily maintained her twice-weekly visits with Emma, shielding her sister from the adult complexities while strengthening their bond. Emma had begun asking more pointed questions about when she could come home to the farm, making the visits both precious and painful. She drew a picture of all of us, Lily told Bob one evening, carefully unfolding a crayon drawing depicting 4 figures in front of a red barn. See? That's you with your silver hair, me with my blue backpack, Emma with her yellow dress, and even Jack's dog Rusty. Bob studied the childish artwork with a mixture of tenderness and resolve. We'll make this real for her, Lily, I promise. But as January turned to February with no substantial progress, even Bob's optimism began to waver. The stress manifested physically. He slept poorly, lost weight, and occasionally lapsed into uncharacteristic silence during their evening routines. Lily noticed these changes with growing concern. One night, unable to sleep, she found Bob sitting alone in the dark living room, staring at nothing in particular. "Are you okay?" she asked, startling him from his thoughts. "Just thinking," he replied, attempting a reassuring smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lily settled beside him on the couch. "About giving up?" The directness of her question momentarily disarmed him. Not giving up exactly, but perhaps reconsidering our approach. What does that mean? Bob sighed heavily. Michael has made it clear he'll use every resource at his disposal to prevent us from succeeding, both with the business and with Emma. The Fletchers' support has been invaluable, but it might not be enough against this level of opposition. Fear clutched at Lily's heart, but she kept her voice steady. "So what are you thinking?" "Perhaps we should consider a compromise. a structured visitation agreement that would allow you regular contact with Emma while accepting placement with another family, combined with relocating Second Chance to a different community where Anderson Manufacturing has less influence. The suggestion hung in the air between them, its implications settling like dust after an explosion. Lily stared at Bob, searching his face for signs that this wasn't really what he wanted. "You want to leave," she said finally. "You want to give Emma away and leave Oak Ridge." "I want what's sustainable," Bob corrected gently. "What gives us the best chance of maintaining some connection with Emma without exhausting ourselves in a fight we might not win?" Lily stood abruptly, her small frame rigid with betrayal. "You promised. You said we wouldn't give up." "Lily, no." The word burst from her with unexpected force. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Adults always give up when things get hard. They always leave." "I'm not leaving you," Bob insisted, rising to face her. "We would go together, build something new. Without Emma." Lily's voice cracked on her sister's name. "We'd be leaving without Emma." Bob had no immediate response, the truth of her accusation hanging between them. After a moment, he reached for her, but Lily backed away. "I trusted you," she whispered, the words cutting deeper than shouted recriminations could have. "I believed you." Before Bob could respond, she fled to her room, closing the door with deliberate quietness that somehow hurt more than a slam would have. Inside, she pressed her back against the door and slid to the floor, wrapping her arms around her knees, as she had done countless times during her months on the streets, a protective posture against a world that continually disappointed. The next morning brought strained silence to the farmhouse. Lily prepared for school mechanically, accepting Bob's offer of a ride, but maintaining a careful distance both physically and emotionally. As they pulled up to Oak Ridge Elementary, he attempted reconciliation. "Can we talk this evening? Really talk about options together?" Lily nodded non-committally before exiting the car without a backward glance. The day passed in a blur of distraction, Lily's thoughts circling between anger at Bob's apparent surrender and terror at the prospect of losing Emma permanently. By afternoon, a plan had begun forming in her mind, not fully developed, but driven by the desperate logic of a child who had learned early that sometimes you had to save yourself. When the final bell rang, instead of waiting for Bob in their usual meeting spot, Lily walked quickly toward town. The children's center was only 15 blocks from school. She had mapped the route weeks ago just in case. Today was not Emma's regular visitation day, but the center had an open play policy until 5 o'clock. If she hurried, she could see Emma, explain things somehow, make her understand that no matter what happened, Lily hadn't given up. The winter afternoon was already darkening as she reached the center, slightly breathless from her brisk pace. At the reception desk, she encountered an unfamiliar staff member. "I'm here to see Emma Morgan during open play," Lily explained, trying to project confidence. "I'm her sister. I have visitation rights." The receptionist checked a binder. "Yes, I see that. But your scheduled visits are Tuesdays and Saturdays. Today is Thursday." "I know, but there's an urgent family matter," Lily improvised. "It's really important that I see her today." Something in her tone must have conveyed genuine need, because after a moment's hesitation, the receptionist nodded. "All right, but just for a short while. They're in the playroom down the hall." Emma's delight at the unexpected visit momentarily pushed aside Lily's darker thoughts. They played board games and built elaborate block structures, while Lily tried to find words for what she needed to say. "Em," she finally began as they colored together at a small table, "you know how I've been working really hard to make a home for us both?" Emma nodded, carefully selecting a purple crayon for her drawing. "At the farm with Mr. Bob and the chickens." The chickens were aspirational, part of Emma's vision for their future together that had grown more elaborate with each visit. "Right. But sometimes grown-ups make things complicated. And sometimes plans change even when we don't want them to." Emma looked up, her crayon pausing mid-stroke. "Are we not going to live together?" The direct question pierced Lily's careful approach. "I'm trying, Em, I'm trying so hard. But there are people who don't want us to be together, and they're making it really difficult." "The mean people?" Emma asked, her concept of opposition simplified to fairy tale terms, sort of. "But listen," Lily leaned closer, lowering her voice, "no matter what happens, I will always be your sister, Always. Even if they make you live with another family for a while, even if they don't let us see each other as much as we want, I will never stop trying to be with you. Okay. Emma's lower lip trembled slightly. I want to go home with you now today. The words ignited a desperate impulse in Lily, a fleeting, reckless thought of simply walking out with Emma, consequences be damned. But reality asserted itself immediately. They wouldn't get far. They wouldn't be safe. And it would destroy any legitimate chance of reunion. Not today, Lily said carefully, but someday. I promise. Their conversation was interrupted by Diane Simmons's arrival in the playroom, her expression shifting from surprise to concern when she spotted Lily. This isn't your scheduled visitation day, she noted, approaching their table. Did Mr. Anderson drop you off? Lily felt Emma's small hand slip into hers under the table, a gesture of solidarity that nearly broke her composure. No, I came from school. I just wanted to see Emma. Diane's frown deepened. Does Mr. Anderson know you're here? The question confirmed what Lily had suspected. Her absence had been noticed. Probably not yet, but it's fine. I'm allowed to see my sister. Under supervision and according to the agreed schedule, Diane corrected. I'm going to call Mr. Anderson to come pick you up. While Diane stepped away to make the call, Lily hugged Emma tightly, whispering fierce reassurances that she didn't entirely believe herself. By the time Bob arrived 20 minutes later, his face tight with worry, Lily had retreated into defensive silence. The ride home passed without conversation, the tension between them building with each mile. Only when they reached the farmhouse did Bob finally speak. You scared me, Lily, when you weren't at school and no one knew where you'd gone. I just wanted to see Emma, Lily replied flatly. Since we might be leaving her behind. Bob flinched at the deliberate barb. I shouldn't have suggested that. It was a moment of weakness, of doubt. I was wrong. Were you? Lily challenged, finally meeting his gaze. Or did you just not want to tell me today? So that's not fair. None of this is fair. Lily's control finally shattered. It's not fair that my mom got sick. It's not fair that Emma and I got separated. It's not fair that your son hates us for no reason. None of it is fair, but at least you could be honest about giving up. Bob didn't immediately respond, the raw pain in her voice seeming to physically impact him. When he did speak, his tone had changed, no longer defensive but reflective. You're right, he said quietly. I was giving up. Not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid. The admission caught Lily off guard. Afraid of what? Of failing you. Of promising something I couldn't deliver. Of watching you get hurt again when it all fell apart. Bob ran a hand through his silver hair, suddenly looking every one of his 66 years. I've failed at the things that matter most. My marriage, my relationship with my son, my company's values. The thought of failing you and Emma, too. It was easier to consider a strategic retreat than risk complete devastation. The honesty of his answer diffused some of Lily's anger, replacing it with a complicated mixture of understanding and determination. But if we give up now, we definitely fail. At least if we keep trying, we have a chance. Bob studied her for a long moment, as if seeing something new in her expression. When did you become the adult in this relationship? I've been taking care of myself for a long time, Lily reminded him. Sometimes I forget I don't have to do it alone anymore. And sometimes I forget what real courage looks like, Bob replied. Thank you for the reminder. The fragile reconciliation might have continued, but they were interrupted by the arrival of Jack Wilson's truck, skidding slightly on the gravel driveway as it came to an abrupt stop. Jack jumped out, his expression unusually grave. Sorry to barge in, he called as he approached the porch, but you need to know what's happening in town. Inside, over hastily made coffee, Jack explained the situation. Michael Anderson had called an emergency meeting of the Children's Center Board that afternoon. Though Jack wasn't privy to the details, his wife Sarah had heard from a friend who worked at the center that the discussion centered on inappropriate contact attempts and concerns about the current visitation arrangement. They're using my visit today, Lily realized with sinking dread. They're saying I'm unstable or something. Likely, Jack agreed grimly, but there's more. Thomas Anderson was seen at the county courthouse filing paperwork. Elizabeth's contact in the clerk's office says it looked like a formal challenge to Bob's guardianship petition. Bob set down his coffee mug with a sharp click against the table. They're moving on both fronts simultaneously, undermining the Emma situation while attacking my custody of Lily. Why now? Lily asked, struggling to understand the timing. What changed? Jack hesitated before answering. Word is, Anderson Manufacturing's stock took a hit when their latest quarterly report showed lower than expected profits. Shareholders are asking questions about management decisions, including the expensive reopening of the Davis plant. So this is about money. Lily's incredulity was palpable. They're trying to take Emma away and separate us because of stock prices. It's about control, Bob corrected quietly. Power, the narrative. Michael and Thomas can't afford to have me succeed at something they opposed, especially with the company struggling. A thriving second chance would raise too many questions about their judgment. So what do we do? Lily asked, her earlier determination wavering in the face of this coordinated assault. Bob didn't answer immediately, his gaze distant as he processed the implications. Finally, he turned to Jack. I need you to call Patricia and Elizabeth. Tell them to meet us here as soon as possible. And contact the Fletchers, too. They should know what's happening. As Jack stepped outside to make the calls, Bob knelt in front of Lily's chair, taking her small hands in his. I want to be absolutely clear about something. I am not giving up, not on second chance, not on our home here, and most definitely not on bringing Emma to live with us. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Lily searched his face for any hint of reservation and found none. The momentary doubt she had witnessed the previous night had been replaced by the steady resolve she had come to depend on. Together, she agreed, squeezing his hands. But what are we going to do? Bob's expression shifted then, a subtle change that reminded Lily he hadn't always been the warm, patient figure she now knew. There was something else there, a steely determination that spoke of decades building and leading a company in a competitive industry. We're going to stop playing defense, he said, his voice taking on a quality she hadn't heard before. If Michael and Thomas want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget. Outside, the winter wind picked up, rattling the windows of the farmhouse that had become so much more than shelter. Inside, preparations began for a confrontation that would determine not just Emma's future, but the very definition of family for all involved. The farmhouse kitchen had never been so crowded. By 9 o'clock that evening, chairs had been dragged in from every room to accommodate the impromptu war council. Patricia Lewis spread legal documents across the table, while Elizabeth Anderson maintained a running list of potential allies and pressure points on a notepad. The Fletchers sat close together, their expressions resolute despite the lateness of the hour. Jack and Sarah Wilson contributed practical insights about community sentiment and local politics. At the center of it all stood Bob, transformed from the defeated man of the previous night into a strategic commander marshalling resources. Lily watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension as plans took shape around her, plans that would determine her future and Emma's. The timing is critical, Patricia emphasized, tapping a calendar. The Children's Center Board meets again on Monday to review placement recommendations. Thomas's challenge to Bob's guardianship won't be heard for at least 3 weeks, but it creates a cloud of uncertainty they'll exploit. We need to neutralize Michael's influence on the board, Elizabeth added. I've identified 3 members with potential conflicts of interest regarding Anderson Manufacturing contracts. If exposed, they'd need to recuse themselves from voting on Emma's case. The discussion continued late into the night, battle lines drawn and contingencies mapped. When Lily finally dozed off on the living room couch around midnight, the adults were still strategizing. Bob covered her with a blanket before rejoining the others, his voice lowered but his determination undiminished. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Bob and Patricia departed early for an emergency meeting with the family court judge, who had approved Lily's original visitation schedule. Elizabeth made a series of calls to former colleagues and social connections, activating networks of influence that had lain dormant since her divorce. The Fletchers prepared a formal statement, withdrawing completely from the adoption process and explicitly supporting the sisters' reunification, to be delivered to every board member individually. Lily found herself temporarily sidelined in this adult-driven campaign. Restless and anxious, she wandered to the barn workshop, where Jack was tinkering with a tractor engine part, one of the few remaining projects for Second Chance after the contract cancellations. Feeling left out? Jack asked, wiping grease from his hands as she settled on a workbench. Sort of, Lily admitted. Everyone's fighting for me and Emma, but I can't actually do anything to help. Jack considered this. Sometimes the most important thing isn't what you do, but who you are. That doesn't make sense, I'm sure it does. All these people, he gestured toward the farmhouse, they're not just fighting abstract legal battles, they're fighting for you and Emma. For two sisters who deserve to be together. Your story, your bond, that's what gives meaning to all the paperwork and phone calls. Lily mulled this over. But how does that help win? Jack smiled. Because in the end, this isn't really about legal technicalities or business rivalries. It's about what's right. And sometimes, when people are reminded of what truly matters, they make surprising choices. This cryptic observation remained with Lily throughout the day, as the farmhouse continued to serve as headquarters for Operation Family Reunion, as Caroline Fletcher had dubbed it. By evening, the first promising development arrived. The judge had issued a temporary order preventing any permanent placement decisions regarding Emma until Bob's guardianship status with Lily was resolved, effectively creating a legal pause button. It's not a victory, Patricia cautioned as she relayed the news, but it buys us time to build our case and counter Thomas's challenge. The weekend passed in a blur of strategy sessions and legal maneuvers. Lily's regular Saturday visit with Emma proceeded as scheduled, though under the watchful eye of not only Diane, but also a center administrator Lily hadn't seen before. Despite the supervision, the sisters' connection remained undiminished, with Emma proudly showing off a new song she had learned in music therapy. Caroline taught it to me, she confided. She comes to sing with us every Wednesday now. This revelation of Caroline's continued involvement with the center, despite withdrawing her adoption application, warmed Lily's heart. The Fletchers were proving to be allies of extraordinary commitment. Monday morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. The Children's Center Board would meet at noon, and despite their preventative legal measures, the outcome remained uncertain. Bob drove Lily to school with promises to update her immediately after the meeting. Remember, he said as she gathered her backpack, whatever happens today is just one step in a longer journey. We're not giving up, Lily nodded, then surprised him with a quick hug, before darting out of the car, a rare physical demonstration of the trust that had developed. Between them, despite recent strains, concentration proved impossible. Throughout the morning's lessons, Mrs. Winters, understanding without being told that something significant was happening, assigned independent reading when she noticed Lily's distraction. By lunchtime, Lily had read the same page of Charlotte's Web at least 20 times without absorbing a single word. The cafeteria's noise faded to background static as Lily picked at her food, wondering what was happening at the board meeting across town. When the principal appeared at her table, a serious expression on her face, Lily's heart nearly stopped. Lily, please come with me. You have visitors in the office. The walk down the hallway seemed to take forever. Had something gone wrong? Had decisions been made despite the judge's order? Worst of all, had Bob's guardianship been successfully challenged, leaving her without even her current home? The sight that greeted her in the principal's office defied all expectations. Bob was there, yes, but so was Michael Anderson. The two men stood on opposite sides of the room, neither speaking. The tension between them was palpable, like static electricity before a storm. Lily, Bob said, his voice carefully neutral, Michael has something he would like to discuss with you. I'll be right here the whole time. Michael Anderson was younger than his father, perhaps in his early 40s, with the same silver threading his dark hair, but a leaner build and sharper features. In his expensive suit and polished shoes, he looked utterly out of place in the elementary school office, with its child-sized visitor chairs and motivational posters. "Hello? Lily," he said, his professional demeanor cracking slightly when faced with the actual child his actions had been affecting. "I believe we've not been properly introduced. I'm Michael Anderson." "I know who you are," Lily replied, remaining close to Bob. "You're trying to keep me and Emma apart." Michael had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That's part of what I wanted to discuss. The board meeting today took an unexpected turn." "What happened?" Lily demanded, fear sharpening her tone. "Did they decide about Emma?" Michael glanced at Bob before continuing. "Not exactly. The meeting was postponed because of some new information that came to light this morning. What information? Instead of answering directly, Michael reached into his briefcase and withdrew a manila folder. "Do you know what these are?" he asked, removing several yellowed newspaper clippings. Lily shook her head. "These are articles about a scholarship program my grandfather established 50 years ago, the Anderson Future Builders Fund. It provided educational opportunities for children from disadvantaged backgrounds." Michael placed the clippings on the principal's desk where Lily could see them. "My grandfather believed strongly that business success created an obligation to invest in community welfare, especially for children with limited opportunities." Bob watched his son with an expression of cautious confusion. "Michael, what is this about?" Michael didn't answer immediately, instead removing another document from his briefcase, this one newer with official letterhead. "This morning, I received the results of an investigation I commissioned 3 weeks ago, a private inquiry into Lily and Emma's background." Lily tensed, but Michael's next words weren't what she expected. "Your mother was Amanda Morgan. She graduated from Oak Ridge High School in 2006, then attended Columbus State Community College on a partial scholarship from the Anderson Future Builders Fund. She studied early childhood development before dropping out in her final year due to financial hardship." The revelation of these details about her mother, some of which even Lily hadn't known, left her momentarily speechless. Bob stepped protectively closer. "Why were you investigating Lily's family?" he demanded. Michael held up a hand. "There's more. The scholarship wasn't the only connection. Amanda Morgan worked at Anderson Manufacturing for almost 5 years in the Human Resources Department. She left shortly before Lily was born. The implications of this connection hung in the air, undefined but somehow significant." Lily found her voice again. "Did you know her, my mom?" "Not personally," Michael admitted, "but many people at the company did. She was well liked, apparently, dedicated." He hesitated before adding, "When she became ill years later, she didn't reach out for help, though company policy included support for former employees in medical crisis. She was proud," Lily said simply. "She didn't like asking for help even when she needed it." Something in this straightforward assessment seemed to affect Michael deeply. He looked away briefly, composing himself before continuing. "The point is, there were connections, threads between your family and ours that I wasn't aware of until this morning. Connections that complicate the narrative I had constructed." Bob studied his son with growing awareness. "You thought I was using Lily and Emma as some kind of public relations stunt, a way to rehabilitate my image and embarrass you and Thomas." Michael didn't deny it. "Your sudden interest in social enterprise after decades of conventional business practices seemed convenient, especially after the board removed you." "So you tried to stop us," Lily concluded, "because you thought Bob was just pretending to care about me and Emma." "I believed I was protecting the company's interests and reputation," Michael corrected, though his tone lacked conviction. "Preventing a potentially exploitative situation." Bob shook his head, disappointment evident in his expression. "You could have simply asked me, Michael. Had a conversation. Instead, you orchestrated this campaign to undermine everything we've built." "Yes," Michael acknowledged, surprising them both with his directness. "That was a mistake, one of several I've made recently." He turned back to Lily, his professional facade giving way to something more genuine. "After seeing these connections to your mother, I realized I needed to meet you properly, to see for myself what kind of situation my father had created with you and your sister. And," Lily prompted when he paused, "and I'm here to inform you that I'm withdrawing my opposition to your reunification with Emma. I've already resigned from the Children's Center Board to eliminate any conflict of interest." The statement was delivered with businesslike precision, but its impact was profound. Lily looked to Bob for confirmation, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "What about Thomas?" Bob asked, his voice carefully controlled. "He filed the challenge to my guardianship." "I've spoken with him," Michael replied. "He won't withdraw the filing. His pride won't allow it. But he's agreed not to pursue it actively. It will eventually be dismissed for lack of prosecution." Bob's expression remained guarded. "And the contracts?" "The pressure on local businesses to avoid second chance. Those decisions were presented as sound business strategy at the time," Michael said. "In light of..." Recent perspectives, I'm reevaluating our approach to community engagement. Anderson Manufacturing will be focusing on its core operations rather than expansion into social services. The carefully worded statement represented a significant retreat from their previous opposition, though framed in terms that preserved corporate dignity. Bob seemed to recognize the olive branch for what it was. "What changed your mind?" Lily asked, cutting through the adult circumlocution. "Really?" Michael considered the question seriously. "Several things. The information about your mother was a factor, yes. But also," he glanced at his father, "also the realization that I've been measuring success by the wrong metrics. The company is profitable, but not thriving in the ways that matter most. The Davis plant reopening was a financial misstep, justified by pride rather than sound business judgment." He turned back to Lily. "And finally, when I walked into this office and saw you, really saw you, I recognized something I've been missing. The human element, the actual lives behind the board meeting agendas and legal maneuvers. You forgot that business is about people," Bob said quietly. "Not just numbers." "Perhaps," Michael acknowledged. "Or perhaps I never properly learned that lesson to begin with." The implied criticism of Bob's own parenting hung between them, neither addressed nor denied. Instead, Michael extended his hand formally to Lily. "I apologize for the difficulties my actions have caused you and your sister. That was never my intention." Lily regarded the offered hand with uncertainty, before finally shaking it briefly. "Does this mean Emma can come live with us now?" "The legal process will still take time," Michael cautioned. "But without active opposition, and with the Fletchers' support, Patricia believes the kinship care petition should proceed relatively smoothly." The qualified good news was still overwhelming. Lily looked to Bob, who nodded confirmation, a smile breaking through his careful reserve. "We should be able to bring Emma home within a month," he said, allowing himself to voice the hope they had both been afraid to name. The principal, who had tactfully occupied herself with paperwork during this extraordinary conversation, now spoke up. "Lily, would you like to return to class, or would you prefer to go home with your guardian for the rest of the day?" The choice was easy. "Home, please. We have a lot to get ready." The drive back to the farmhouse passed in a daze of relief and cautious celebration. Bob filled in details Michael hadn't covered, how Elizabeth had uncovered the connection to Amanda Morgan through old company records she still had access to, how she had strategically presented this information to Michael separately from their legal countermeasures, appealing to his sense of corporate legacy rather than challenging his authority. "Elizabeth understood something important about Michael that I had forgotten," Bob admitted as they turned onto the gravel drive. "He's driven by legacy and reputation, yes, but also by a genuine belief that he's doing the right thing. When presented with evidence that his understanding of the situation was incomplete, he was willing to reconsider." "So he's not actually a bad person?" Lily asked, trying to reconcile this new perspective with the adversary she had imagined. "Few people are truly bad," Bob replied thoughtfully. "Misguided perhaps, defensive, operating from incomplete information or flawed assumptions." He smiled slightly. "Sound like anyone else we know?" Lily recognized the gentle self-criticism. "You mean how you almost gave up? And how you once thought all adults would eventually abandon you?" Bob added. "We all make mistakes in judgment, especially when we're afraid." By afternoon, the farmhouse had transformed from war room to celebration headquarters. Elizabeth arrived with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for Lily. Patricia brought the official paperwork indicating the withdrawal of objections to the kinship care petition. The Fletchers appeared with a homemade cake decorated with the words "Sisters Together." Even Thomas's daughter Rebecca made a surprise appearance, bringing a peace offering in the form of financial support for Second Chance's expansion. "Dad's still being stubborn," she confided to Bob on the porch, "but he'll come around eventually." Michael standing up to him was the first crack in his armor. As twilight settled over the farm, Lily found a quiet moment alone with Bob on the porch swing. Inside, their friends continued celebrating, their voices and laughter drifting through the open windows. "I can't believe it's really happening," Lily said, watching the first stars appear. "After everything, Emma's finally coming home." "Believe it," Bob assured her, "though I suspect our adventures are just beginning. Raising two spirited young ladies will be a journey in itself." Lily smiled at the thought, then grew serious. Can I ask you something about Michael? Of course. Do you think you two will ever really fix things? Like be a real family again? Bob considered the question thoughtfully. I hope so. Today was a beginning, not an ending. Healing takes time, especially when the wounds run deep. Like with me and Emma, Lily observed. Even though we love each other, we'll still have to get used to being together all the time again. Exactly. Bob looked impressed by her insight. All families have their challenges, Lily, even the ones that appear perfect from the outside. What matters is the willingness to work through those challenges together. Inside, someone called their names, Elizabeth announcing that Patricia had news about an expedited court date. As they rose to rejoin the gathering, Lily paused. Thank you, she said simply, for not giving up, even when you wanted to. Thank you, Bob replied, for reminding me what was worth fighting for. 3 weeks later, on a bright March afternoon, Bob's SUV turned into the Children's Center driveway for the last time. Lily sat in the passenger seat, practically vibrating with anticipation. In the back seat, a booster had been installed according to safety regulations. A small suitcase waited in the trunk, though most of Emma's belongings had already been moved to her newly finished bedroom at the farmhouse. Mrs. Patel met them at the entrance, official paperwork in hand. Emma's all ready. She's been packed since breakfast. The final signatures were applied, the last procedural boxes checked. And then suddenly it was happening. Emma was running down the hallway, launching herself into Lily's arms with a squeal of pure joy. We're going home? For real? Forever? Forever, Lily confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. Just like I promised. Bob knelt to Emma's level. Ready to see your new room? Lily helped pick out everything, and the Fletchers brought a special surprise yesterday. Emma nodded enthusiastically, then turned to wave at the center staff who had gathered to see her off. There were tears and hugs, promises to visit, assurances that the Fletchers would continue their weekly music sessions. Diane Simmons, who had initially been skeptical of their unconventional arrangement, presented Emma with a photo album documenting her time at the center. So you'll always remember the people who cared for you here, she explained, even as you make new memories with your family. The word family lingered in the air as they walked to the SUV together, Bob holding Emma's small suitcase, Lily keeping a protective arm around her sister's shoulders. Not a traditional family by any definition, but one forged through crisis, strengthened by challenge, and ultimately validated by love and commitment. As they drove away from the center, Emma chatted excitedly about chickens and tree houses and whether she could paint stars on her bedroom ceiling. Lily answered each question patiently, occasionally catching Bob's eye in the rearview mirror, sharing silent acknowledgement of the milestone they had reached. They were halfway home when Emma suddenly asked, "Is Mr. Michael coming to visit us too? He brought me a teddy bear last week." The question momentarily startled both Lily and Bob. Michael's change of heart had extended to occasional visits with Emma at the center, but they hadn't discussed his role in their newly formed family. "Would you like him to visit?" Bob asked carefully. Emma nodded. "He seems sad sometimes, like he needs more friends." From the simple wisdom of a 5-year-old came the perspective they had all been struggling toward, that healing wasn't just for the obviously broken, but for everyone carrying invisible wounds. "I think we could arrange that," Bob said, his voice warm with possibility. "Perhaps for Sunday dinner next week." As they turned onto the gravel drive leading to the farmhouse, they could see a welcoming committee had assembled on the porch. Jack and Sarah Wilson, the Fletchers, Elizabeth, Patricia, even Rebecca Anderson representing the tentative bridge to the wider family. "Look at all the people," Emma exclaimed, pressing her face against the window. "Are they all here for me?" "For us," Lily corrected, reaching back to squeeze her sister's hand. "They're here because we're all connected now." Bob parked the SUV and turned to face both girls, his expression solemn despite the joyous occasion. "Before we go in, I want you both to know something important. When I crashed into that barn during the storm, I thought I had lost everything that mattered. I was wrong. I was about to find what truly matters." He extended his hands, one to each sister. "Welcome home, both of you." As they walked toward the farmhouse together, Lily thought about the unlikely journey that had brought them to this moment, from a storm-battered barn to a home filled with love and possibility. The path had been neither straight nor easy, But standing here now, with Emma's hand in hers and Bob's steadying presence beside them, she knew with absolute certainty that it had been worth every difficult step.